Welcome to the Authentic Man podcast. I am your host, David Chambers. This is a podcast for men who want more and less from life. More deep connection, more emotional intelligence, more self-awareness, and more great sex. And less heartache, less conflict, less overthinking, and less stress. Creating dating lives, sex lives, and relationships that are incredible and authentic. My deepest goal is that you, the listener, can take away what you hear in this podcast and apply it to your life so that you can experience greater happiness, transformational growth, deeper relationships, and profound sexual intimacy. I believe that as men, we are capable of so much more depth than we are shown or led to believe. So join me as we get deep into this. Hello. Welcome back to the Authentic Man podcast with me, your host, David Chambers. This week's episode is a really incredible episode I recorded a number of weeks ago with three wonderful men, four including myself. I like to say I'm a wonderful man. Where we talked about men, masculinity, and romantic love, and the intersection of how men relate to love, relationships, dating and falling in love through the lens of being men, through the lens of masculinity, the lens of what we are taught that how we should, as men, should show up. So the wonderful men I'm joined by is Ben Bidwell, who's a mindset and purpose coach, as well as a writer, public speaker. Jamie Clements, who's a breathwork coach and a mental health ambassador and a podcaster as well and James Walsham, a men's coach and also a mental health advocator. So we all actually have podcasts. Ben's podcast is The Naked Professors. Jamie's is A Man Down. And James is Just the Honest Bloke podcast. And we really get together for a second time. We talked about sex on a episode on Jamie's podcast a little while ago. We really get together and talk about our personal experience with love and relationships. And you really get four men who've had very, very different experiences from, a couple of the guys being very anxious in love and actually causing real damage to their mental health and having to journey through that into a healthy relationships. You've got men, myself, who's very avoidant around relationships, love and commitment, and how I've journeyed through that into a really beautiful and healthy relationship with my partner also. And Ben, a man who, also was, a bit turned off to love completely, and how he's opened himself up to receiving love and being in the sort of relationship he's looking for. So this is the sort of episode that, if you're a man and you struggle with love, you struggle with being in a relationship, whether you're feeling avoidant, you're feeling scared, you lie, you cheat, there's something here for you because there's an account that matches your experience. And if you're a woman and you're just interested in, why men are the way they are, why do you keep being unlucky in love, quote unquote unlucky in love, or, you find yourself being with avoidant men or men that get deeply attached, then this is an episode for you because you're going to hear men who have journeyed through that and moved to the other side. And just, hear what it's like, actually, the pain, what's really going on underneath those experiences. Because when we're with somebody, or even when we are the man going through this and we're avoidant, we're very rarely aware of why we're deeply avoidant. Or when we're anxious, we're very, very rarely actually aware of what it is that's sitting underneath our anxiety that's making us anxious. So in this, you're going to hear men who have been through it. They've gone through it and found themselves in amazing relationships. So there's so much to learn here, right? So much to learn. It was a really beautiful conversation. I love to have these conversations. And I love to have these conversations with great men who, are open-hearted to have these conversations. It's a very moving, very raw, very honest account. It's listening to it isn't even intoxicating to listen to, There's just so much gold, so much openness, so much vulnerability that's displayed here. So, I'm just going to let you know about what I'm up to beforehand, before we get into the episode. I've got a retreat coming up. I mentioned this a little while ago. It's called Intimate, the Reimagined. It's happening on the 19th of July to the 22nd of July. I've teamed up with my partner also, my wonderful partner, as well as Gabrielle from the Secret Yoga Club and Amy from the Temple of Feminine. And we're basically hosting a midweek kind of retreat getaway for couples who want to just deepen intimacy, maybe reconnect intimately, find what it is, that spark that maybe is dulled over the months of COVID and being at home together, and kind of reignite that in, a deep dive into romance and sex and intimacy. And it's going to be a really safe space to come as you are, whatever shape or size that you are, whatever shape or size your relationship's in. And it's just really going to be an incredible retreat just to bring some more intimacy, bring some more love into your relationship. So it's beautiful to go with this episode. And if it sounds interesting to you, even if you feel a bit scared, or you feel like your partner might not be up for it, be courageous. The link's in the show notes. Have a look at it. And if you're interested, I'm happy to have a chat, so you can find out a little bit more. So yeah, that's all the preamble stuff. So yeah, like I was going to say, also, I just got a couple of coaching clients that have just rolled off. So if you're looking for some coaching around finding a beautiful relationship, getting back into dating, connecting with yourself intimately or with others intimately, I'm open for a couple of spots for guys. So, just get in touch. I've got my email in the show notes as well. But that's all the preamble stuff. So now we're going to get into the episode, and my heart just feels deeply open for this episode because it was really beautiful to record and then to listen back to when I edit and go over it. So, without further ado, I'll let you get into this episode of the Authentic Man podcast. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very excited for this episode. I've got 3 wonderful men with me who I've got to know over the last, I'd say, year. So following their content, getting to know what they do, having a deep admiration for the work they do, and also sharing a space with them, which has been, it's been really beautiful to share a space with powerful men. Actually, I think it's been one of the biggest growths in my life in the last year and a half. It's really changed how I view myself and other men. And we're going to be talking about men, masculinity, and romantic love, and what it means. Is there struggles for men? Is there struggles for masculinity and love? And what does that mean? And each man's individual journey with that. So I'd like to introduce you. I'm going to go across their names and then they'll introduce themselves individually. I'm going to introduce Ben Bidwell, James Clements, and James Walsham, wonderful men. But I will let them introduce themselves. So Ben, would you like to kick off first?
Yeah, thank you. Just a short intro to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I guess Ben, otherwise known as the Naked Professor, on Instagram, which cringes me each time I say it. Still a little bit more each time, but that's my tag, I guess. And I guess I'm a coach, writer, public speaker, all sorts. Goes under that banner, but fundamentally, my message and my passion is about sitting in this space of helping men to understand all of who they can be. Which is obviously hugely relevant and topical at the moment. And I guess I should also say my work isn't exclusively with men, but having gone on the masculine journey and gone on my own path of personal development and understood the challenges that sit with men. I guess that's my real passion. But ultimately, I want everyone to find a path to inner peace. Actually, is the best way I would describe it right now in this moment. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Beautiful, love that. Jamie?
Thank you. And yeah, great to be here with you guys again. It's beautiful to get the boys back together in this capacity. So my name is Jamie Clements. I am the founder and host of a podcast called Man Down, the anti-man up movement focused around, I suppose, what you might term modern masculinity with a focus on championing vulnerability and authenticity. I'm also founder of the breath space and a breathwork coach alongside all of that, which might not sound that closely linked, but I definitely see real tight links between the work I do with breathwork and getting people into a place where we can connect fully into ourselves and understand ourselves on a deeper level.
Jamie. And James.
Thank you for having me here, mate. So excited to get this is round 2. So the 4 of us have been together. We jumped on Jamie's podcast a few weeks ago, and that conversation was wonderfully received. So really excited to be here with you guys again. Find it very difficult to articulate what I do. Just at the moment, I kind of on the precipice of stepping into a coaching space and really kind of defining the coaching that I do. But ultimately, the work that I am passionate about is men's work. I stepped into kind of an online space with a view to what Jamie's talking about, with kind of authenticity and vulnerability, about a year ago. Started an Instagram account called The Honest Bloke, and really the sentiment behind that page is to talk about my journey through the work that I've done, my challenges around my own mental health, my exploration and understanding about how and why I've come to struggle within myself and my identity as a man, and the journey through healing that. As a result of that, I found a voice and an authenticity that I really can see lends itself to a lot of men. And one of my biggest passions to step into that space and start trying to help men was the loss of a very, very good friend of mine, one of my best friends, about 3 years ago, to suicide, and really, really understanding why men are, feeling so disconnected from their hearts and being able to speak their truth and reach out and ask for help. So that's the kind of focus and intention of the page. And we're here.
Beautiful. Thank you, gentlemen. Yes, and it's a wonderful work that you all do, with men. And I think there's this common, the words I kept hearing across all of you is vulnerability and authenticity and connection. And it's interesting because when I started this podcast, one of the things that one of the kind of core ideas was around vulnerability is the key to great connections. And it's not often that we kind of look at it that way. It's actually, it's how we connect. And I guess inside of romantic love, it's going to be a really interesting see how where that comes up for men and masculinity in itself. Like, what's the role in that? But I want to start with, we've got a load of questions from various listeners and Instagram followers. But the first question I'm interested in actually is asking each of you is, what's your journey been when it comes to love? What's it been like for you, through your growing up with romantic love? And we'll take, everyone can go, we can be very orderly and use hands like we did last time. Yeah, Jamie, go first.
How long have you got? God, I think what came up for me there, and this is going to be very much, as all good podcasts should be, highly unprepared and somewhat off the cuff, but really sort of my truth, I think. So I suffered, and similar to what James mentioned, a lot of this work, I think, when we come to thinking about wellness, well-being, mental health, and coaching, in a lot of cases, it comes from our own battles, our own struggles. And I struggled with anxiety and depression for the best part of 10 years, from the age of 15 to my mid-20s. And the reason I bring that up is that a lot of that was rooted, especially the anxiety, was rooted in abandonment anxiety. And that showed up most prevalently in romantic relationships and in almost under the guise of love. And I think I found myself in relationships where I was heavily codependent, heavily anxiously attached, and the fear thereof of being abandoned was so overwhelming, and in a lot of cases kind of completely debilitating, that I developed quite an interesting kind of relationship with love, and my relationships followed a very familiar pattern. And it wasn't until I started working through a lot of that anxiety and the root of it and where it came from, and really understanding myself at a deeper level, that what I thought was love in a lot of these relationships that I'd had in my early 20s and late teens was actually a connection, an initial connection, lust, romantic connection, which then turned into a heavily anxious attachment. And then I confused that deep-rooted fear of losing someone with real love, I think was what I felt for a lot of my life. And I spoke to James for my podcast just before Christmas, so about 6 months ago. And last year I went through a really kind of almost the inverse of that. So I found myself in a very avoidant place. I was scared of opening myself up because I'd had a lot of experiences of hurt through that anxiety. And having moved through a lot of that anxiety, and don't get me wrong, it's still present at times. I sort of flipped it on its head and became very avoidant. And it's only recently with, a relatively new partner that I've actually been able to feel like I can open up myself up to love again. And it's been a real growth experience for me. I think I felt more growth in the last 2 months in relation to love and romantic relationships than I have in the last, 10 years, because I've seen a lot of what I feared in practice. And I think it's not only kind of credit in a way to the work that I've done on myself, because these things don't happen overnight, but also the work that my partner's doing as well, because I think it takes two people doing their work to, and that phrase gets thrown around a lot, but just what I mean by that is just personal development and actually trying to understand yourself. And when you've got two people trying to do that, it's not always going to go perfectly, but you stand a much better chance of being able to work through the stuff that does come up. So I think that's kind of a brief-ish summary of where I've been and where I'm at now.
Thank you, Jamie. I love how you talked about the attachment styles. Is something that people aren't always aware of, is that like there's these attachment styles where for many people they get into love and they just get anxious, and the fear about losing it and where it's going to run off to and what they're going to do wrong like really creeps in. I can never remember the name of the book. It's just called Attached, right?
Yeah.
It's a wonderful book about attachment styles. And then the avoidant is obviously the opposite. It's those who want to avoid relationships. They want to avoid love, which is really that's me to a T, to be honest. But I'll go into that in a bit. But it's the importance of seeing that and not just blaming it on the other people. I think that's what we get into a lot when it comes to men and love, is blaming the other sex. Who would like to jump up next? Go for it, James.
Let's do it. So first and foremost, Jamie, like, to acknowledge the conversation that you and I had. My episode of the podcast with you was our first conversation, and I think it's where you and I really, really connected with a deeply, deeply similar and connected. Just we both sat there and went, holy shit, we've been through the same journey. I don't think we sat there, like, obviously at the time, like when you realize that other people experience the same journey as you, it gives you faith. It gives you reassurance. It makes you suddenly stop listening to the voices in your head that tell you that your experience is like personal to you. And like my journey's been really similar to yours. So my romantic journey has been one that I feel like I've always had a big heart and always had a real desire to love. And from my first love at 16, which was a 2.5 year relationship through to kind of 18, 19, and up until now, I've always led with a really, really big, really powerful, really, open to give, open to receive heart. Like, always really been open to love. But my journey with my journey with romance and my journey with self-worth has deeply, deeply tied in. And I've been on a big path, a big area of self-development myself around, I'd probably say I had a big tipping point back in 2015, which was, end of 2014, where I was probably in after my first love. I was in my first, what I felt was adult relationship, really kind of grown up, mature, kind of real love. And I was in a relationship with someone, and out of nowhere, I was blindsided by a trauma and a wound that got opened up, and it absolutely fucking shattered my mental health. to the point where I questioned everything about myself, my self-worth, who I am. It really, really took me on a deep, horrible, dark path of questioning whether I wanted to be here anymore, questioning my own self-worth, questioning, what fucking value I add to the world. And, it was, at the time I didn't quite connect it, but through my, my journey of really kind of unpacking that and getting close to it and understanding where it all comes from, my desire for connection and my desire for, it's something that we all as humans crave, which is connection and love. That was where my trauma lay. That was where my challenges were, deeply, deeply rooted. And it took someone leaving me. And in this situation, it wasn't even for me, it wasn't even a traumatic, someone cheating on you and, treating you like shit and leaving you for someone else. At that point, it was just someone who at the time wanted to go and journey and spend some time elsewhere in the world and just wanted to go and do their own thing. But she left me and it fucking turned my world upside down. And that was the start of what I deemed to be my mental health journey. So, that was, the tipping point was that end of 2014. And I went on a long journey to kind of really unpack and heal that, which, if I'm really honest, I kind of ebbed and flowed through that journey. I, thought I'd healed it, went to another relationship, triggered the shit out of me as well. Like again, hurt me even more so because I wasn't aware of the patterns that I was following. But until the relationship that I'm currently in, my last relationship ended in the summer of 2018, and I spent 2.5 years on my own. And that was really, really where I did my healing. And I sat with myself and I looked at my patterns of behavior and the patterns of my attachment. And I just started to, rather than run away from the pain and run away from the trends that were, if I'm really honest, sat there fucking screaming at me to pay attention to them and really heal them. And yeah, I did it. I sat with them. I paid attention to them, and I sat and did the work, and I realized, did a lot of healing. And, here I am now, at, what am I, 30, nearly 31 years old. And, I'm in a, what I deem to be a really, really wonderful, really conscious, healthy relationship right now with a beautiful, conscious partner again. And, it's a great space to be in. So that might have just sounded like a bunch of mumbo jumbo for about 5 minutes, but that's me.
No, it wasn't at all. I really had a journey of self-learning. I don't want to call discovery because they're always there, but it's like seeing the pain that's there and owning it and taking responsibility for the pain and taking responsibility for healing yourself, instead of, as is often said, is like when we bleed, we can just wander around with our wounds and bleed them onto all the people we meet. You took some time, you healed, you looked at what's going on for you. And I think that's a really beautiful message for men and women to hear, because I think what I've heard from the two of you is not a story that often is told by men of pain, of wanting to, feeling anxious around love and being in love. The story is often the opposite, and that is the prevailing story about men and love and relationships. So Benjamin.
Yes, it is kind of like, where do you start, isn't it, with this? I guess where I feel like I should start is that, weird thing to say, but for the first 30 years of my life, I don't think love wasn't something that interested me or appealed, really. Like, it did deep down, of course, but I couldn't tell my mum I loved her. I couldn't share love. I never gave myself any love. I didn't have any connection to love inside. There was no real self-love. There's a lack of self-worth. I really lent on everyone else to allow myself to feel some form of love. But it wasn't really love. It was perhaps validation, but it wasn't really love. I felt I had to prove my worth to ever receive any love. I never could surrender into the space and and receive, and know that I was worth being loved and expressing love. And I say all that, and I don't carry any blame or shame. No one taught me. I had no idea. I just was what I was, and fundamentally, I was someone who didn't love themselves, who'd never been taught how to love myself, and it made life really hard. And without that love, it was a constant search for anything else that would fill me up. So all the quick wins, all the quick chases, because I wanted to experience something. There was just emptiness. And so it was just one quick search, one constant search for women, alcohol, parties, all the rest of it, things that gave me something at that moment, allowed me to feel, this is what it's about. This is fun. I like this. I feel alive now. I feel something. So all the way through my 20s, I was single. I almost got scared if I met someone I liked. It was almost like, God, what am I going to do now? Because I quite want to hang out with this person more, but who am I if I'm not doing all those things? I've got no stories for the lads. No one's going to want to speak to me. I've got nothing to share. And it was just this constant that I was never going to experience real deep fulfillment or sense of love within myself. And my journey with love only started when I started connecting with my truth, with actually who I really was, stop being who I was meant to be and what society told me to be, and actually start learning about your real you, Ben. And then from there, learn to love yourself. And now from there, you can enter into a deeply loving relationship. Big part of my journey was when I was probably 30, 31 and sending my mum some flowers and telling her I loved her. And something inside of me at that point felt good about it. My ego was pricked. I was like, oh, what my brother's going to think of me sending flowers to my mum? How cheesy, But something inside of me was like, I'm really glad you did that. Deep down, I had to go far to find it, but I knew there was something. And that's been my journey ever since, allowing love in, learning to love myself, allowing to surrender, let other people love me to receive, because I know there is worth there. And I'm still single now, in a complicated situation, or it's been complicated. I feel very ready to receive love. What I've learned is that for me to really experience love and the joys of love, I need to really go there. I need to really go under the surface with someone. I want to be a team. I want to be immersed in their world, and I want them to immerse themselves in my world. And that's quite hard in today's world. I find that hard. A lot of people aren't ready for that. At the same time, it also excites me because the right person, when they do receive it, it's quite unique. It's unique. And I think, all four of us sit in the space as kind of more conscious men, let's say, without wanting to categorize ourselves, but it is still quite unique. And I think there's a lot of women who will be unsure how to react if they entered into a relationship with us. We won't be playing games with them. We won't be making them chase and kind of playing the bad boy and that kind of stuff. We might be a bit more upfront and sharing our emotions, sharing what we're feeling. And that can be challenging. So that's the new challenge now, is trying to find that person who's ready for that and really wants to go there, because that for me is where love really, really comes alive. And I feel ready and deserving of that. So that's my what came out for me about love right now.
I'm just going to jump in before David takes the conversation on. Ben, that was fucking beautiful, mate. Like, that was just to hear the way that you articulated everything that you expressed there. Thank you. Like, you and I know each other very well. And I think that one of the things that men really, really struggle with is sitting in a space where men are vulnerable, express their emotions, connect with that emotional spectrum that we have. We talk about love, we talk about vulnerability, we talk about whether it be sympathy, pain, love, kindness, compassion. You just fucking embodied that. Like, it was powerful to sit and listen to, mate. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I was really moved by the honesty of the journey, your 20s, of looking back and going, love was a confusion, seeing that your own worth was so tied up in your doings and what you've produced, what you create for the world. But actually also sitting now in is like, I'm ready to receive love. There'll be women that hear your words there and their hearts will just, some of the coldness in their hearts will melt. Some of the hardness in their heart towards men will melt, because it's like, they don't know, they don't hear that men feel this way. So yeah, thank you. It even melted my heart a little bit, there.
Thank you. It's beautiful to have the space to share that. So thank you to you all.
Come on, boys, we fucking love this.
Yeah. I would say my journey with love is an interesting one. I had a first relationship, like it always starts for me with this relationship at 16 years old. Fell head over heels in love with my girlfriend, and lost my virginity. We were planning our life together, that sort of thing. And what seemed to be out of the blue for me, she was like, I want to break up. And I was devastated, absolutely heartbroken. I sat at home eating ice cream on the sofa. My mum just didn't know what was going on. You got my mum, who is a pretty hardened Jamaican woman, seeing her only son just sitting on the sofa every day, moping and eating ice cream out of the bucket, I'm going to call it a bucket, because I would literally get the big, the 2-liter ones, and just sit with a spoon and just be like, and just eat. And I was just miserable. And I think after that, what happened is my heart hardened. I was like, I don't want to feel like that again. I don't want that to happen. And I remember going off to university not long afterwards and kind of stumbling across the fact that to heal my heartbreak, I went to the gym. One of my friends took me to the gym. He was like, Dave, he literally came to my house and was like, we're going to the gym. For 9 months, I lived in the gym. 17, 18 years old. I was going there pretty much 4 or 5 days a week. And I went to university, and women suddenly were like, oh, David. And I was like, oh, this is odd. And then I also was a bit like, I don't want a relationship. I don't want that, but I'll sleep with you, and I'll sleep with her as well. But I'll tell you about it, but I don't want any of that. Found myself in relationships and not really being able to fully give myself to the women I'm with, and always finding something wrong and having my eye on other women. And this is a pattern I had really much through my 20s, exacerbated by the fact that I went into the dating coaching industry and really learned to meet women. But it was always that the love was dangerous. I didn't want to surrender. I didn't want to hand over who I was. I was always avoidant. I was deeply avoidant. Whenever I started to feel something too much, I would always find a way to sabotage the relationship, And I guess it culminated for me in a really loving relationship. Actually, I got to my end of my 20s and found an amazing partner. We traveled together, and my inability to communicate my emotions and feelings ruined the relationship. And I remember sitting there one day going, I can't let this happen again. Right? I can't let this happen again. But then I also had a tendency before that, is when I meet women I really liked, I'd be too scared to tell them, too scared to really be like, I want this, because I had my fear of that I couldn't give them what they needed. I couldn't make them happy. And I guess for me, it was a journey over the last couple of years of just being like, oh, I need to learn to communicate my emotions and my feelings and just be really in touch with them myself. And, a couple of years ago, I decided all I wanted was open relationships. I was like, I want a really ethical, open relationship. And I met a girl I worked with and fell head over heels in love with her after a few months. We had beautiful, amazing sex, great conversation. She was spiritual. She introduced me to Tantra. It was just, so many things. And then the day I told her that I loved her, she turned around and said, no, I don't want this. I don't want this to be anything more than that. And I was lying in her bed because she had gone out. She'd left. She was going back home to Wales. And I was lying in her bed crying where she wasn't there. And I remember being like, and after that, I just realized that's the most open I'd ever been. And that's the most I'd probably felt hurt. But I also realized in that moment, I was like, oh, I can deal with this. And if I surrender to the love that's there that I want to feel, there's so much joy there. And yeah, this time it didn't work, but I deeply believe that I can find it and make it work at another time. And yeah, I had to heal myself through that after that, and go through that and just be with what I was feeling, be with the heartbreak. And I'd say I'm lucky I met my now partner also. And it was almost, again, I was like, I want something open. And she was like, yeah, I'm in that too. So we really had that open side of the relationship for for a good year and a half, actually, until we decided that we wanted to close that kind of chapter. But deeply fell in love, lots of great communication, really like with each other on this journey of deepening our awareness of ourselves and each other and together. So I can say that my journey with love has evolved from being deeply avoidant to being like deeply surrendered to it, but also deeply responsible for myself, my feelings, and what's going on for me. Yes, Jamie.
Sorry, it's just a word that I know we've covered a lot in previous conversations that we may well come back to, but yeah, just hearing you come back to that word surrender throughout everything that you said there, and it being very much a positive thing. And I think, you know, if we're talking about masculinity and romantic love, it could be, you know, top of my list as far as things we need to get comfortable with. And it's a journey, right? Like, it's something that I've only recently do I tell this anecdote? Yeah, why not? I was in bed with my new partner the other day, and I just felt like we were just lying in bed, just cuddling, really, really nice. And I just like started tearing up. And it was just like that sort of surrender, not only to someone else, but to my own comfort in that situation, not feeling like I had to be anything or do anything other than just kind of be present in that space. And yeah, it's a word that is constantly coming up for me at the moment is surrender.
I'm sorry, I fucking love you, bro. That's unbelievable. Like that, like hearing you say that, I get fucking excited about hearing that, because I recognize in my own journey, in stages of my life where I have experienced a similar level of emotional reaction, connection, vulnerability. And do you know what? If there was ever any other men present, witness, if they knew that I'd been through that, everything that I would experience would be shame, embarrassment. And the problem that we have as men is that every fucking part of us wants that, right? The reason that you felt that level of emotional connection and that release is you connecting with that feminine, the whole masculine feminine energy is getting a bit of a rap right now, because it's like we shouldn't be so like polar of like saying, like, ultimately as human beings, whether you're man, woman, identify as whatever, we all experience the same emotions. But there's absolutely that right now, there's that label of surrender, emotion, connection, flow that is very much more lends itself to the feminine energy. So for you to sit there and say that, man, I fucking heard you say that, and I was just so excited for that for you, because man, there have been times in my life where, and I had a similar experience about 3 weeks ago, and I was lying in bed with my partner, and like, don't get me wrong, we just had sex and we were having a conversation, and we were talking about our kind of individual journeys and our own kind of journey, like our own direction and what we want to go and achieve. And we both have a bit of an understanding and a bit of sadness about the fact that we feel there's going to be some divergence and we're going to go apart at some point in the future. And I just fucking surrendered, and I burst into tears. I cried my fucking eyes out, and I shared whatever was in my heart at that time. And after that, after whatever we were talking about kind of succumbed and we moved on, I think it was maybe the next morning, she shared with me that she said it was one of the most beautiful fucking things she's ever seen, ever. So when, and I love that. I love that. I love that I've disconnected from the fear and, disconnected, wounded masculine perception of crying and vulnerability and emotion and all that shit, like all that good stuff that we don't know how to do as men. I love that I've disconnected from that narrative that's bad stuff. And like hearing you say that, like I want to acknowledge you, and I want to hear that, and I want to say, like, man, like that's fucking unreal, because that, when we unpack and remove and push to the side all of the shit that we face as men in terms of our barriers to connection, like that's what we all want. It doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, what your background is, what your culture, race, sexuality is. That's what you fucking want. You want to be able to sit in your vulnerability, share it with someone, and be seen. And you've done that, mate. So I love you, mate. Fucking unreal.
Yeah, I'd love to expand as well on this, because this feels a little egotistical, and I don't mean it this way at all. I was dating last summer, and we were in a beautiful space together, and we were on a lovely little journey. We were coming together and getting to know each other. It was the early days, and it was really just, we had a real beautiful bond, and we were having sex, and she started crying, and I was like, whoa, like, is everything okay? What's going on? Like, what's happening? You know, like, it was a shock, and she sort of obviously felt really, really embarrassed and was trying to hide her away. And I was like, what's going on? And she said, I'm just so happy right now, you know, and it melted my heart. I was like, that just was so beautiful to receive. Brené Brown talks about it a lot, that we see vulnerability in others as such a beautiful thing, such a strong thing as well, and willingness to allow ourselves to be seen at that level, but we see it as weakness in ourselves, you know. And as someone who received it, it was so beautiful. It was like, you know, like your partner experienced, James, when you and Jamie, I'm sure, and your partner, I don't know how it went, but I'm sure there was a absolutely like well, actually, you said, James, your partner received it. Sorry, I don't know how yours received it, Jamie, but I just, if someone is emotionally available to receive that with someone that they like, love, or willing to go on a journey with, it's magical. It's magical, and we try and hide it so often, and we don't surrender. You know, we don't allow it. I heard someone say the other day, or I read that you know, removing fear isn't about trying. It's just getting out of your own way, you know, and in those moments, just expressing what is true, not going, oh God, I mustn't let them see this or feel this in me. It's just allowing what is the truth in that moment, which is, I'm feeling so much, and it impacts me, and I'm going to let you see it. But it's scary, like David, what you said before, you know, you said love, and then you were left. And we hold on to those stories, don't we? I'm never going to do that again. That God, I'm never going to screw up like that. So I'm not telling anyone I love them ever again now, because that really hurt me, and it just blocks us. You know, it's that's why it's vulnerability, right?
Yeah, if I can just very quickly add to that as well, I think it's something that I've come to recently in therapy, and it's something I've kind of known but never really verbalized from the place that I'm in at the moment, is just this acceptance that and it ties quite nicely to like the emotional spectrum as well, is that the opposite of love is loss. That's the reality of it. And it's the same that if you cut off your high-end positive emotions, if you cut off your low-end negative emotions right at the bottom of that emotional spectrum, you also cut off your capacity to feel the high-end joy. And it's the same with love. If you stop yourself from wanting to experience that fear, you also stop yourself from being able to open up to the opposite, which is that kind of full-blown kind of ecstatic love. So it's important to have that kind of that understanding that is realistic, and not getting caught up in this sort of storybook notion of perfect love, I think.
And also, I just want to add to that as well, is that if you disconnect from your love and connection to self, you have absolutely eradicated the possibility to connect with someone else. So when you talk about like maybe that, like, you know, difference and that opposition of like kind of polarity and on opposite ends, actually, if you look at love as a concept, and you sit there and say, actually, if I can't connect to myself, I can't connect to someone else. And that is probably the most cliche thing that you see shared on, you know, Instagram memes, you know, self-love posts. But there's so much fucking value in that's where that comes from. You know, if you cannot receive, you cannot give. That's the polarity, giving and receiving. You know, being able to actually recognize the energy that you want to, you know, have come into your life, you won't be able to receive it unless you understand what it looks like. And the only way that you know what it looks like is if you learn how to give it to yourself. So yeah, that's just, again, my 2 cents.
I love that, what you're saying about the giving and receiving. I did a podcast with Robert Glover yesterday, actually. And he talked about this idea of his idea was around that love is actually a masculine thing, active love of giving, because it's an action. But one of the things he really said is about husbanding our own feminine, is filling up our own bucket of love through self-love. And he didn't call it self-love, but he was saying, spending time in nature, spending time with other men, doing things for ourselves that we really love. And I was really sat there on the podcast with him, and I was like, wow, yes. You listen to something and you're just like, yes, it's this need to give ourselves this love, right, that we don't always do as men, because we think we have to be giving, we have to be doing all the time. It's in our way of being. And it's what cuts us off from actually receiving, because we can't, as we were talking about before, we can't surrender. And receiving love is a real act of surrender. You just have to take it. You have to just let it flow to you. Someone is trying to do something loving for you. They might be trying to give you a gift. I think this is the most obvious example, is where someone tries to give you a gift with love, and you're like, no, you shouldn't have. And in those words, you are basically saying, I can't receive this because you're trying to give me love and I can't receive that. And I think that's something for us men that we really, really struggle with, is just receiving love from not just in relationships. I think it's inside of relationships, but also just generally in our lives.
Yeah, just want to touch on what you said there, because an example that I can give in my immediate memory and experience is literally, I would say in the last 3 hours, I was sat there with my partner, and I gave her a cuddle, and I looked at her in the eyes, and we had one of those intimate moments, and I said, "You are so fucking beautiful." And she looked at me and she said that she basically said, she looked awkward. She looked uncomfortable. I told her she looked beautiful, and she didn't know how to handle that. And so I think the reason I'm mentioning that is because it's not a mutually exclusive, men can receive compliments. Sorry, men can't receive compliments and struggle, and women can. This is something that, as men and women, we can all struggle with in our own way, in our own variation. But I sat there, I told my girlfriend, I said, "You look so fucking beautiful." And it was don't get me wrong, it was cute. It wasn't awfully uncomfortable, but she also in acknowledgement, you could see she didn't know how to receive that compliment. So the whole giving and receiving is a really, really important conversation to have, because giving is a masculine, receiving is a feminine. And we need to, as men, connect with flipping those roles. We need to get in touch with, the fact that, I think, David, you and I talked about it on my podcast, is the energy that you engage with, whether it be sexually, romantically, if you constantly connect with the same energy of giving. So if you are in your masculine energy of giving and providing and giving, whether it be love, sex, pleasure, it doesn't matter how good you are at it. If you keep doing the same, if the same energy exchange is given and received over and over and over and over again, number one, there's no polarity, and number two, there's no mystery. So you need to create some mystery. For me, is the key there. You have to be able to connect with mystery. And two, like I say, it doesn't matter how good you are at it; it gets fucking boring. And there's a lot of conversation around cheating and inhibition, and whether it be men or women who cheat and why they cheat. Women might be more disconnected. Women might be more connected to their emotions than men, but the reason why we cheat is the same, and that is a lack of gratification. Whether it be physical or emotional, it's probably more emotional, and it's because we look for something else to make us feel good. So it's really, really important that we actually learn how to step into both giving and receiving, because when you do that, you can walk into the bedroom. You can walk into the bedroom with the woman you've been married to for 10 years. And if she knows how to give and to receive, you do not know what the fuck you're going to get. And that's the mystery. That is the intrigue. That's the excitement. So it's really, really important that you learn how to do both.
Yeah, and just expanding on that, that's been a massive part of my journey. I couldn't receive compliments at all. You know, I'd make every excuse for if someone complimented me, I'd basically tell them they're wrong. You know, because for me, you know, Jamie, we've spoken about this before, but this avoidance of arrogance, you know, and it's like if I accept your compliment, then I'm basically agreeing that I'm amazing at whatever the compliment you just said is, and I can't do that. I don't feel that, and I can't receive that. So I remember working with a coach. We literally role played, where she would give me compliments. So I just have to sit there and look at her and say thank you, you know, and just receive it. Because, and you know, I remember that in the experience when we give a compliment, and I was very good at giving compliments to people, you know, and saying, you know, like you just said, James, in terms of saying to a girlfriend or something, I could say, wow, you're just so beautiful. And if they wriggled out of it, or they threw it back, or go, no, you just seem, it's just a light, or it's just like this, or it's just that, or no, like I'm really not. You're like, no, like I want you to receive it. I've said it because I mean it. Don't take it away from me. Like, please, just receive it. But yet, you know, I knew that, but I wasn't receiving myself. So that's like when someone gives me something now, I really just want to allow them the honor of saying thank you so much. I receive that, and I'm really grateful.
Yeah, I think a lot of us could feel that when the compliments come, it's a bit of a struggle to just take it on and be like, oh yeah, I can be okay with that being true. I can sit with that, but the feeling of that there is something good about me. There's something good about me. I'm gonna change tact a little bit here. It's one of the questions that came in through the old gram, and it's come from someone. And the question here is, and I think we've touched on it a little bit, but I think everyone's gonna have a nice, beautiful take on this, is how can men overcome their fear of falling in love and of potentially getting hurt and the ultimate loss of that relationship? Go for it, James.
So number one is like just acknowledge it, because everything within the, I don't know, I'm going to use some real spiritual language here, but like the disconnected masculine, which is men who are scared of showing up emotionally, don't know how to connect. Maybe they know how to connect, but they, again, the fear absolutely overcomes and suppresses their ability to do so. Just their inability to connect. That's what causes it. So acknowledge it in the first instance. Understand that there are a lot of the conversations that I've had recently are around maybe the binary narrative of masculine and feminine, and sitting there and saying, right, masculine embody these characteristics, feminine embody these other characteristics. The problem is that when we group those into those two like segregated categories, we sit there and we go, well, actually one belongs to one, the other belongs to the other. And that's it. There is, for me, like maybe to oversimplify a tad, but that is the entirety of why we are struggling to connect, grow, evolve as human beings. Because like men and women have the same emotional spectrum. There is an infographic, and I've seen it shared in a number of different mediums, which shares literally from sadness, desperation, hope, depression, suicidal, emotions, all the way around to, embodying, I don't know, overwhelming happipiness, just everything you could ever imagine, all of those like overwhelming happy emotions. It's something you'd see shared in a science class. It shows you, it lists every emotion there is on our spectrum. And what I've seen and where I've kind of maybe had conversations with, whether it would be men or women about that, is that men do not connect with enough. It's almost half. It's not quite half, but there is a black spot within men, and they do not connect with a number of those. And like, let's just generalize and use the labels of masculine and feminine. The feminine connotations attached to, again, vulnerability, empathy, maybe fear, sadness, rather than boldness, conquering, again, action, fixing, doing, like all of those things where you go, I'm going to go fucking fix that. Men have from day one been taught to disconnect, fear, feel embarrassment and shame over all of those things that you would naturally relate to the feminine. So we need to get our heads around the fact that it doesn't matter how you're born, how you identify. It doesn't matter whether you're male, female, non-binary. It doesn't matter how you identify within the gender conversation. Human emotions, there is one and all, and we all connect to the same shit. So that is not a conversation to be had around whether you were born with male or female genitalia. And we all need to connect with the fact that that entire spectrum is accessible to every single one of us. Now, the challenge is that as men, we do disconnect. We are taught to feel embarrassment and shame over the shit that you're like, the four of us have been sat here for the last however many minutes, really stepping in it because we love this stuff. We love it. We love being vulnerable. We love being, we've actually connected with the, the ability to overcome the fear and sit there and go, you know what? I'm fucking scared about this. I cried about this. Like, I don't like this feeling. We're there. We've done it. We've got to a position where that stuff, there is zero fear over that. If every man on the planet and some women, again, it's not it's not a mutually exclusive gender conversation, but if every human being on the planet can connect with that narrative, we are suddenly going to absolutely start, the level of connection, the level of healing, the level of happiness, the level of love is just going to skyrocket. It's going to transcend to anything and everything that we have experienced. So we just need to, once again, cannot remember what the original conversation and the original question was, but hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, it's the question was around how men can overcome falling in love and the potential hurt and loss. And then you really went into it. I think that, like, when I thought of the question, it went into a lot more depth than I'm about to do. It's like I look at my own journey, and a lot of it was actually realizing that I actually had a fear about falling in love, and what the fear was. And my fear was that I was going to be hurt. And what did that mean? What would happen if I got hurt? And I think it's why being hurt a few years ago was such a blessing, because I was strong enough in myself and old enough to realize, I can be hurt and I can be okay. It's not going to completely devastate my life and who I am. And I think that's what comes up for a lot of men, is not believing they can deal with the hurt, but using a shell on top of that of, I don't want to fall in love. Love isn't for me, or I don't want a relationship. And it's so easy to hide behind that, because we are met, the falling in love, I feel like it's when you look at the movies that we watch, it's always women falling in love in these movies. It's always these romantic things. It's always like women falling head over heels for a man, and the man is being cool and stoic and like kind of like just there being his cool self. He's not falling deeply in love, madly in love, like lying in bed thinking about women at night. So we're shown so much as young boys that falling in love isn't something men do. And I think this is such a powerful message that's happening, that we just get, we call it conditioning. You can call it brainwashing. You can literally call it we are brainwashed into this idea that men don't fall in love, men don't feel their feelings. So it means that because we don't take those little steps to feel continuously, the idea of getting hurt after love is so detrimental in our minds that we won't even face it. And it's interesting. I spoke to a woman not too long ago, and I really can't remember who it was, and she just said women are much better at getting over heartbreak because they learn to feel all the time. So whereas men have blocked the feelings when it comes to the end of a relationship and it all falls apart, because they don't know how to deal with emotional pain, it overwhelms them and they don't want to deal with it. That's really what comes up for me in my experience.
And just to maybe build on that, because there are certain men that in the world of, we consume a lot of, whether it be media, we consume, like, social media is a big thing. We can sit and follow people in the world. And if I were to, I'll give an example of one man that I feel embodies everything within the masculine and feminine energies. He's probably the most masculine man you could ever imagine by virtue of the characteristics that you associate with being a man. But feminine is someone who will, without discomfort and without fear, share their vulnerability, will share their feminine aspects, will share their love of the feminine. And that's Dwayne Johnson, The Rock. So, like, I've loved that man since I was a kid, and I watched wrestling when I was 10 years old. I was lucky enough to meet him when I was 24, and there is so much to be said by the way that man gets in the gym. He works on. Again, I think that there's probably some challenges with defining things as masculine and feminine, because again, there's more nuance and complexity. But if we just sit in the simplicity of saying masculine and feminine for now, Dwayne Johnson embodies everything that there's no one more masculine than that. The dude is an absolute fucking powerhouse physically. You can't get more big, strong, powerful as a man. It doesn't matter. I don't care what fucking discipline you're in. Like, you're not going to want to stand opposite that man and be in a disagreement with him. If there's something that threatens your physical safety, that is not the man you want to stand opposed to. But when someone is also in everyday sharing his stories of the songs he sings his little girls when he goes to sleep, the embodiment of the love and the surrender he has to the energy that and the lessons he learns from his wife, there is just, again, we talk about taking action and surrendering. Those are two opposing energies, and it doesn't matter who you are. I don't care if you are the least spiritual person on the fucking planet. We have to learn how to recognize that stuff is within every single one of us. And when we learn to connect and we learn to lose shame, and when we learn to embody and connect with that pure happiness and that pure embodiment of who we are as human beings, we're almost entering into the same conversation from whether it be the masculine or whether it be the feminine side. There is a meeting point in the middle. And when you get there, it doesn't matter. You can be as masculine as you fucking want. But if you are only sat in your masculine, you are sat in fear, and you are not willing to succumb to the surrender and get close to all of that shit that deep down we all want: connection, love, kindness, compassion, vulnerability. So yeah, again, maybe, we're sat here as four men having a conversation. We're men, and whether we identify as really masculine men or feminine men, doesn't matter. We're men. But there is a middle point, and we all need to get there.
Yeah, there's definitely a point there to get past our fear. I think I see more and more in life that much of life's journey is confronting and getting over our fears in the various aspects of life. It's just a bit of a journey of doing so. Whatever obstacle you have in front of you, it's just a fear that you have. And if you just need to move past it, deal with it, heal from it, and move forward from that. One of the other questions has come up from the listeners, and I quite like this one because I think this is something that we've all done in our lives in some dysfunctional way. And it's around why men lie when in relationship, why they're not transparent about what they want, what they feel. I'm going to go over to Jamie, because I know you had your hand up earlier. So what's your feeling? What's your take on this question?
it's a really good question. Why men lie? Where to begin? I think there's an element of I think probably shame in there. I think certainly, and I think it sort of ties to what I was thinking around the previous question as well, is that if we're even able to get past the emotional disconnection factor that a lot of men battle with, we're then thrust into this place of fear, this place of stereotypes, this place of cookie cutter Hollywood love. And I think because the masculine that we've talked about quite a bit here is very much about fixing, and I think it's something we touched on when we talked about sex last time, was like the idea of failure is not something we're comfortable with. And so I think if I think about the times that I've told, even white lies in a romantic relationship, it's been because and I know, James, we've spoken about this, I'm so wedded to the idea of being the good guy that I will actually then lie to keep that front up. And I think that for me is certainly, and I can only, as you said, David, I can only really speak to my own personal experience, but I think whenever I have even considered lying, it's come from that place where I actually am so fearful of hurting someone, or so fearful of not being what I think they expect me to be, and being quite uncomfortable with gray in a relationship and non-perfection, that I would go to that place where I think about lying to maintain that kind of facade. So yeah, that's what sort of came up for me there.
Yeah, I really resonate with that, actually. I've been listening to the book No More Mr. Nice Guy, and it's a very interesting book, and I'd say it is one of the deepest men's work books you can pick up. It seems so simple. The language is simple. Even when you pick up the book and feel it, the text is so big. It feels like it's for 14-year-olds. But actually, what you go through reading that book is seeing that this idea of us being nice and good as men, because we have this idea we want to be good. We all want to be good men. We want to be a good man. Even if we're bad men and we think we're bad, we want to project the idea we're good men, which causes us to lie. And I can definitely say resonate with what Jamie is saying. In my own experience of relationships is I would lie to avoid conflict. I would lie to avoid hurting. I would lie because I was afraid of what would happen if I told the truth. I would lie if I was ashamed of the thing that I did. And this is all inside of being perceived as being good. And it's just this, and it almost feels quite backwards that you are lying in your relationship to be good, because we all know that lying is something we shouldn't do. We tell children at 3-4 years old, you shouldn't lie. But yet we cover up this idea of like, I'm going to do this lying here, but ultimately it's for a higher good. It's almost it's literally a form of small level spiritual bypassing, isn't it? It's like, I'm going to tell this lie here because, I'm serving a greater good of our relationship. And it's okay to do that in these moments.
Yeah, there's almost an arrogance in it, like a very deep-rooted, like pure masculine arrogance in that I know best here. I know what is going to be the thing that fixes this, and the thing that fixes this is going to be telling the lie, because I kind of almost like I know better. So yeah, no, I can feel a lot of that.
Oh, do you want to go, Ben?
Sorry, I thought you were about to give us some wisdom, David. I was just lying in space. Yeah, I like everything we just said. I think for me, all of this in the last couple of questions, it's all because men fundamentally are connected to our ego and disconnected to our heart. And our ego is rational and logical and trying to work everything out. And you can't think love. You can't rationalize it. You can't make sense of it. It's something that sits within our heart. And like Jamie and like James and you were just saying, our ego will work out ways to get us out of trouble, to feel accepted. And at times, that's the greater good above lying, because as long as we can kind of keep this peace right now, or still feel validated or accepted, that's the main goal right now. And we're not present in that space. We're thinking, It's an entirely different energy for me. So all of this work for me is around making our heart our choice. Like that's the energy that we choose. That's where we choose to come from, to let go of our thoughts, our thinking, our rationale, and to sink into what feels, to what we know inside of us. That's where love exists. And that space is willing to be vulnerable. That space is willing to share emotions. There aren't any stories around it. It's just our truth. We're not trying to think, oh, I need to protect myself. She might run if I tell her I love her. There isn't any of that going on in our heart. That's all the stories that our ego is creating because it's fearful. So all of this for me, and this is the entire journey that I've gone on personally. So perhaps I always go back to this space because it's how I went about this myself. But ultimately, as men, we're way more connected for me to our egos than we are our hearts, and I don't blame men for that. It's what we're shown, like we said before. It's the way we're taught, and it's what business is about ultimately as well. You know, business is very rational. It's about getting stuff done. It's about doing. It's not about sinking into our hearts and talking about how we feel. You know, but when it comes to love, we've got to be connected to our hearts. And I didn't even know what my heart's energy was for 30 years. So how I was going to experience love, I was trying to work it out. Tick boxes where she looks like that and she does this and I should love her. Never going to work.
Beautiful, Ben. Beautiful. Yeah, I feel like those final sentiments, it's like it's come through all the questions, isn't it? Is that we are shown a certain way when in relation to love. We are shown a certain way as men that we should be, or we shouldn't be in relation to love. And we take that as our example. And we take that as the example that we should be, whether it be movies, whether it be business, whether it be the media, whether it be our fathers even, that we see. And we take that on and say, oh, this is how it is. This is how I must be to be a good man, be successful. And we don't question it. And I feel like I'm trying to read a lot of books about masculinity that were written maybe 30 years ago. I'm reading something called Fire in the Belly. And it's interesting. He talks in there about how, this new idea of men questioning, and he says it's been happening since the 60s. And I see this beautiful thing of like the half-life of things. There's a half-life of racism in that every generation that's born sees that what their experience is terrible. But the generation before was like, well, we've come a long way, and they kind of relax back. So every generation that comes and goes, no, I need to do something about this. This isn't good enough. And then they half it, then the next generation comes. And this is how we're progressing. And I see with masculinity and love, there's this progression that's happening through the decades of men coming and going, no, we want more. We want to feel more. We want to be more connected. The example that we're being shown isn't right. It doesn't, not so much it isn't right, it doesn't work for us. It doesn't bring us the connection that we really dream of having, that we really yearn for, and it's what's come through all these questions, is that we allow fear to get in the way of what we really want, or we allow the people around us, their message, their way of being to dictate what we want, when really deep down what we want to feel is this connection.
There, I just want to jump in and say, absolutely. It's just, when you hear men just talk about connection, and there's just so much language that, within the four of us and the conversations that we have, they're not used between men. We talk about connection, we talk about vulnerability, we talk about safety, and just to use some of my own experience, probably the most common word that has come up in my relationship in the last Olivia and I have been together for the last 5 months is safety. And I would say that if you hear the word safety, men would hear that and deem that to be a quality that is attributed to men providing it for women. And it's not a man versus woman thing. Like, the four of us have all shared our insecurities, our fears, our anxious connections, our avoidant connections, our worried about being left, our lack of self-worth if a woman leaves us in this conversation. And safety is it's a universal quality that we all seek. It doesn't matter whether you're born man or woman, identify as any other. Like, we all need to feel safe. And again, I believe there's within one of these models, I don't know if it's Carl Jung or one of these other attachment model theories, but safety is like the base level. Every single person, regardless of how you identify, how you love, how you feel, every single person, beyond and before all of that, we all need to feel safe. Safety is the thing. We all want that shit. Safety to feel how we feel, safety to love how we want to love, safety to express how we want to express. And if you get all of that stuff, that's where real fucking love comes in. That's where real romance comes in. That's where real connection at a deeper level comes in. So, you know, again, I'm really grateful for the partnership that I'm in right now, because, you know, it's something that I've never experienced before, but it's only come about by virtue of probably suffering that unconsciousness or that lack of ability to understand what a conscious relationship and connection feels like. And that only really comes when you learn to understand yourself. So do your own work, and all of a sudden, you know, those healed, wonderful, connected, deeper, that connection will present itself when you go and do that work.
Beautiful. I think that's a beautiful place to end. You know, when we do your own work, the love you seek, you're able to receive it, and it will turn up in your life in such a beautiful way. And it's true to look at our language of how we talk about love and relationships. So something you said, James, I think is really important. That often, and the guys listening, is how often do you relate to a relationship as a prison, as a ball and chain, something weighing you down, when actually it's truly the thing that will set you free and give you true freedom to be you, is when you can receive that love, the love you can receive in a relationship. Thank you, man. That was beautiful, incredible. I'm thinking about wrapping up. I know we are very close, and I want you to tell the listeners where they can find you, how they can work with you. Yeah. Ben, would you like to kick us off?
Yeah, thank you. I guess my world is Instagram, really, isn't it? The Naked Professor on Instagram. Everything goes there, really. I love these conversations. I love sharing around this stuff. This is the future for me. This is, you know, coming up right now in front of us. And yeah, I'm just grateful to be part of the conversation. So thank you.
Jamie?
Yeah, Instagram is probably the best place, at the Breath Space or at Jamie Clements, and the Man Down podcast as well. And also Clubhouse, obviously Clubhouse.
Indeed, Clubhouse. And James?
Yeah, so Instagram is naturally your kind of hub. So at The Honest Bloke. But I would say number one, yeah, Clubhouse, all those other forums that we're all currently kind of dipping our toe into and trying to find our way with. But I just want to say, look, this is the second time that the four of us have got together. I love it. I'm going to invite the three of you onto my podcast soon, so we'll do round 3 soon. If you'll accept, I'd be fucking honored, gentlemen. So yeah, we'd love to have you all on soon, and I'm sure we'll frame the conversation a different way, but hopefully it will have as much impact, because it is a real pleasure to share this forum with you guys. Like, you guys are all fucking heroes and legends, and I love you all. So
thank you, brother. I think I can tell from the nodding that's going on that we all feel the deepest love and honor for what we do, and how we sharp honestly about what we truly believe in our power. And yeah, I'm sure we'd all love to do round 3 on your podcast, James. So, you know, digest all that, people, take that in, re-listen to it, go and find all the men on their podcasts. Like, I know Ben's got his podcast, The Naked Professor, obviously Jamie and James as well. I put all the links in the show notes. And until next week, thank you very much for being here. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, mate. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, mate. Pleasure.
Thank you.